So great to be here. So great to be with all of you today. And I want to share with you a little of that story that Stu alluded to in the hopes that sharing some of the adversity that I've gone through will help you connect the dots with the adversity that you're going through right now. Because wherever you are in the world right now, you're going through a unique experience. We all are, right? And it's tough. It's hard. Sometimes life is just really, really difficult. You're welcome. That's your motivational presentation for the day. See you later. No, but we have to acknowledge that truth, though, right? I mean, you're going to hear 40 amazing speakers over the next 2 days, and a lot of us are going to talk about being positive and having a good attitude and all of those important leadership things. And yet, at the same time, we also have to be realistic. We live in a real world with real problems. And I am aware that each of you right now watching, wherever you are, is living a really challenging experience, whether you're in school or schooling at home, or whether you are in a place where they're in lockdown or you're in a place where you have a little more freedom. It's just a crazy time. And it's a time that none of us were expecting, and none of us has a rule book or an instruction manual for how to do it properly. And that's very similar to the experience that I lived when I was waiting for a transplant. Imagine, if you can, sitting in a hospital waiting room and a doctor comes through the door to give you news about your diagnosis, because you've been in this hospital now for about 3 weeks. And it's been about 3 months since you last felt like yourself. You know that something is wrong. You just don't know yet how serious it is. But the doctor's about to tell you. And you try and prepare mentally and emotionally, but we can never be fully prepared when things are this difficult. And a doctor comes through the door, and as soon as you see his face, you know it's not good news. He sits down across from you, he looks you in the eye, and in one sentence, he transforms your entire life. He says, "You need a heart and 2 new lungs, and you need them now." And just like that, everything changes. He keeps talking. You're still trying to process what he's just said, but you tune in and out to hear things like very low chance of getting on the transplant list, very low chance of surviving the surgery. If everything goes well and we find a donor for you and you do manage to get the surgery and you do manage to survive, the 5-year survival rate of that transplant is 50%. Imagine trying to absorb all of that. It's at a bit of a different scale, but it's not dissimilar from what we've all tried to absorb over the last year. Remember back in March when everything changed in the span of 4 or 5 days? What do? How do you cope? Today, I want to give you 2 strategies, 2 ideas, a framework for how to cope with whatever you have to deal with in your life, whether it's a pandemic or some other big challenge. Whether you're going through mental health issues, or a divorce with your parents, or moving, or life is full of these challenges, and this framework applies no matter where you are or what you're doing. And the framework is simple. Applying it is a little more challenging, but let's do the framework first, okay? Very simply, we have to do 2 things. First, we have to accept, and then we have to adapt. And so I call it A squared, right? Accept and adapt. And today we're going to talk about how you can do those 2 things. And I'm going to share the story to help kind of frame the idea. So after I'm given this news, I'm given the choice of have a transplant or go back home and spend whatever time you have left with your family and your friends. Because statistically, we're not going to find a donor for you in time. I was 23 years old when I heard that news. Imagine how you would feel. What would you do? It took me about 30 seconds to make that decision. I said, you do whatever you need to do to get me on the transplant list, because I'm not going home to die. And so a few months later, I found myself and my dad packing our bags and moving 1,500 kilometers from home to Toronto to start waiting for a transplant. After getting to Toronto, we moved in with my dad's cousin, who was nice enough to allow us to stay with him. And we lived there for months and months and months while I waited for this phone call. And for months and months and months, the phone call didn't come. I spent Christmas away from my family and friends waiting because we couldn't leave town even for a day because that might be the day that the call came. Finally, after several months of waiting, my condition got worse. I developed something called ventricular tachycardia, a big medical word. All it really means is that my heart would spontaneously race out of control. And that left me at risk for something called sudden cardiac death. Doesn't take a medical degree to know what that means, right? Your heart goes really, really fast and then it stops. And they said, look, you're at risk for your heart stopping at any second, and there's really nothing we can do about it. But we also can't leave you at home with this problem. It's too dangerous. So what we want you to do is come into the hospital so that we can watch you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that way, if something does happen, medically trained professionals will be on site, be able to respond quickly. And so I want you to imagine now you've moved 1,500 kilometers from home. Now you're going to move into the hospital. And you walk into this little 10 by 10 space and you realize that this is going to be home. Home for 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. You don't know. You just know that statistically speaking, you're probably going to die in this room. How would that feel? If you're like me, I would love to tell you, as a motivational speaker that I was positive or that I found the silver lining in the cloud or whatever the heck it is I'm supposed to say. The truth is, I was angry. I was frustrated. It's not fair. Why me? What did I do to deserve this? I'm too young to die. All of those emotions went through me every single day. How many of us have felt like that over the last year? You didn't ask for this. This isn't the school year you wanted. It's easy to feel like it isn't fair because it isn't. And I sat in that room in that hospital for weeks and weeks and weeks feeling sorry for myself. And then one day my mom came into the room. She sat down with me and she did for me what everybody should really do for the people they care about. And that is, she told me what I needed to hear instead of what I wanted to hear. And great leaders are willing to listen to the things that they don't want to hear because they know it helps them get better. And so my mom said to me, Mark, look, you got a choice to make. You can choose to feel sorry for yourself if you want to. I understand. I empathize. I get it. But let me ask you a question. Where are you going to be next week or next month if you keep thinking the way you're thinking and feeling the way you're feeling? So you go ahead. You feel sorry for yourself for as long as you need to. But if I were you, I'd start trying to focus on what's going right instead of what's going wrong. I'd try and focus on what I'm grateful for instead of what I've lost. How many of us would agree that that's pretty solid advice? And how many of you are like me, and when mom or dad tries to give you advice and you're not in the right frame of mind to listen, you don't listen? Mom gives me these great inspiring words, and I believe my response was, whatever, Mom. You don't get me. You're not the one stuck in this room. You don't know how I feel. See, at that moment, it was all about me. I couldn't even think about or empathize with the fact that my mom was watching her son die and couldn't do anything to fix it. It took about 3 weeks for her words to really go from here to here, or maybe more accurately, for the words to feel like they were my idea and then they were a good idea. I understood what she was trying to teach me, which is the first thing I'm trying to teach you today, which is the importance of acceptance. At some point, we have to accept that there are things in our lives that we can't control. Look, as leaders, we're all about taking action, right? We're all about making change, and that's absolutely true and absolutely important. But in order to do that well, we have to be focused with our time and our energy. We need to spend our time and our energy where they're going to have the most impact. And too often, we will waste our time and our energy on things that we can't control at all. How many of us find ourselves worrying? How many of us find ourselves getting anxious? Over the last year, there have been all kinds of things to worry and wonder about. Sitting in that hospital, I worried all the time. I was there because my heart could stop literally at any second. Is that something to worry about? Absolutely. And for weeks, I wouldn't go to sleep at night because I was afraid. I was afraid that my heart would stop while I was sleeping and I wouldn't wake up in the morning. And then I remember one morning I woke up and it occurred to me that I had worried all day the day before. My anxiety level was sky high. I was stressed all the time. And yet here I was still awake. I was still okay. I was still there. But I had worried the day away the day before. And that day was now gone and I was never going to get it back. And so I made a commitment to myself that day that I was going to live today, a bracelet I wear every day to remind myself to just be present, to be in the moment, because this is the only thing I could control anyway. And that doesn't mean we don't set goals and we don't plan for the future. Absolutely, we do. We're going to talk about that in a minute. It means we let go of the things we can't control so that we can control the things that we can, so that we have the time and energy to focus on what it really makes a difference. So we can use our time and energy well. And that's challenging to do, but with practice, we can get better at it. See, if you think about it and imagine this is your life, and imagine yourself right here in the middle. Okay, and here in the middle, you have complete control over everything that happens. There are certain things in your life that you control completely. You pick what you wear in the morning, you pick what you eat for breakfast, you pick what you think about. And then there are some things out here that you influence, but you don't control. Forgive my horrible handwriting. Okay, so those are things like, your friends and your family and things that happen at school. You have some impact, some influence as a leader, but you can't completely control them because you never control whatever other people are going to do. Right. And then we have things on the very outside here that we have no control over at all. My favorite example of that is the weather. But if I asked you to plot on this chart, if we made this kind of chart like this, and I said, point on this chart where you are using your time and energy each day, would you say that you're spending most of it in the middle, or some here, or are you wasting a lot of it on the outside? And I think if you're honest, you'll admit that you're spending at least some of it on the outside, on things you can't control at all. And if you don't think you do that, when was the last time you complained about the weather? I know in Canada, we do it pretty regularly. But if you can't control it, then there's no sense stressing about it, worrying about it, or trying to fix it. And so I learned over time in the hospital to let go of those things that I couldn't control. And it has served me very well through this pandemic. And it serves me very well in my life every day, because my transplant is a treatment, not a cure. Doctors were very clear about that from the beginning. In other words, I'm not fixed. I still take about 20 something, give or take 20 pills every day to make these organs work, prevent rejection. And because of those medications that suppress my immune system, I'm at risk for all kinds of other things. If I were to catch COVID, it would be very, very serious for me. And I could spend the rest of my life worried about when the organs will fail or when I'll catch an infection that I can't fight off. But if I do that, then I miss life. And so I choose to accept that I can't control those things so that I can focus on what I can control. Now, if we just stay in acceptance, we become victims. How many of us know somebody like that? They're really good at accepting. In fact, they're so good that everything is out of their control. It's always somebody else's fault, somebody else's problem. There's always somebody else to blame, and they don't take accountability for anything. Well, that's not a leader. So we have to go to the next step, which is to adapt, right? After we've let go of the things we can't control, then we start to change the things we can. And that's what we've all been doing, whether we like it or not, over the last year. But leaders don't just do it reactively, they do it proactively. They think, how can I change this situation, maybe in little ways, maybe in significant ways, to make it better for me and for the people around me? So when I was in the hospital, that looked like very simple things. I remember we brought in a bedspread and my sheets and my pillows from home so that my hospital bed felt like a bed, like my bed at home. We put up posters on the walls and decorated the room so that it felt more like my room. Once I got through the transplant, it started to look completely different. There were all kinds of changes to make. I had to get used to all these new medications and this new rehab routine. And then I thought, gee, I wonder what's possible now, because now that I have this transplant, I'll be able to do the things that I'd never been able to do before. And so we shared in the introduction about running a marathon. I want to share where I was when I decided I was going to run the first marathon. And I'm going to show you a picture. This is not a pretty picture, so I like to warn people ahead of time. Okay. Um, it's about 7 or 8 days after the transplant. I'm still in the ICU, but this is where I was when I decided that I was going to run the first marathon. So I'm sitting in this hospital bed. I've got, I don't know, 40 staples across my chest. I weigh like 80 pounds. I haven't walked on my own yet. I hadn't run in 15 years. But that day I decided I'm going to go run a marathon. And did I get out of bed? Did I get out of bed the next day and start running? Hardly. I needed the help of a walker to get from my bed to the bathroom that day. But slowly and surely, I made progress. I continually adapted to this new reality, which meant at first just learning to walk again on my own, or at least finding the strength to walk again on my own. It meant going to the gym 3 days a week in the hospital to lift weights so that I could regain some muscle mass. Let me tell you guys that going to the gym and lifting pink 1 pound dumbbells was a humbling experience, to say the least. Then it meant learning how to jog and learning the kind of how everything felt a little bit different inside of my chest cavity because of these new organs and things have been shifted around so much. And it took months of training to be able to jog for a couple of minutes. It took a year or so to be able to go for more than 4 or 5 kilometers. But 2.5 years after that day, I crossed the finish line of the first marathon. And I show you that not to brag and say, look at me, aren't I special? But to remind you what's possible if you accept and let go of what you can't control so that you can use your time and energy well to focus on what you can control. What could you accomplish in the next 6 months or a year or two if you wasted a little less time on the things you can't fix and spend a little more time on the things that you control? How could you be a better leader, be a better brother or sister or friend if you let go of what you couldn't control and adapted to the new reality and started working on what you can control and put your effort towards those things? I think we can all make a bigger impact if we start to do that. And look, that's not easy, but it's definitely possible. And I'd love to give you a couple of tools to help you do that. There's going to be the QR code is up there. That's going to give you a link to download my book, Live Life from the Heart. That's on the bookshelf behind me there. It gives you 52 little strategies that you can apply in your life daily to make little incremental changes that will ultimately improve the quality of your life. And then as a leader, the quality of the life of the people around you. One of the things I learned in running a marathon is that even though the goal is big, the steps are small. And I believe great leaders know that you want to do big things, absolutely, but we do it in small steps. People often will say to me after a presentation, wow, you ran a marathon. I could never do that. And I always say, no, you could, you just don't want to. Because see, running a marathon is actually pretty simple. You get at a start line, a gun goes off, and you put one foot in front of the other foot until you get there. That's it. And so the question really is just, are you willing to do that? Are you willing to put one foot in front of the other foot, in front of the other foot for days and weeks and months and years in your life to become a better leader every day? And if you're willing to do that, then the sky's the limit for you. And so I invite you over the next 2 days, as you listen to all the amazing speakers you're going to hear, to think about the little incremental changes that you can make, to let go of the things that you can't control so that you can adapt and focus on the things that you can control. And if you take small, consistent actions over time, the results can be absolutely incredible.